Hi there. Welcome to the Elated Real Estate channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Thanks to all those that have subscribed so far. Thank you for sharing and thank you for watching. We appreciate it. We hope we find these topics useful and we're going to cover a variety of things, including anything that you have for suggestions or want us to discuss. So we hope you'll reach out and let us know. You can always reach us at jim.fountain@metrobrokers.com. And we hope you'll reach out to us with questions you have. And there's also a Calendly link in the description if you want to schedule a consultation with us. So today we're going to talk about earnest money, specifically about earnest money in Georgia, but earnest money. And we're going to talk about some of the different topics related to that. And then I'm going to go over a copy of our contract and what it says about earnest money and how it treats it. But we're going to first talk about what's earnest money for. Earnest money is for good faith money or consideration showing the seller in a transaction that the buyer who provides the earnest money, that the buyer is serious about the purchase or their intentions are to purchase the property that's for sale. So it's money that's at stake during the process of escrow or the time between contract and closing. And that money is consideration that's tied up for the purpose of good faith or money to show that intention is there. I get asked a lot, how much should earnest money be? And this question is a great question. That's changed over the years. In 1998, some of the first contracts I wrote were earnest money was $500 or $1,000. I think now a good rule of thumb I advise my clients on is, between 1% and 2%. Certainly as much as is necessary to get the attention of the seller or to show the intention is there that you hope to show. So I say a good rule of thumb is between 1% and 2%. In competitive offer situations, I advise much more than that, especially when much more is being put down. It shows better intent and maybe better financial wherewithal to carry through on that transaction. Who holds it? The buyer's broker can hold the earnest money. The listing brokers can hold the earnest money, or the closing attorney can hold the earnest money. There are circumstances where the seller may want to hold the earnest money, which can be risky for the buyer and very advantageous for a seller client. The earnest money, generally, if it's held in a broker or closing attorney's account, would be held in an escrow account that'll be named a lot of time, or at least publicly disclosed within the transaction. And so that earnest money account should be separate from other funds that the broker may have or the closing attorney may have, so that there's no question as to where the money is and what account it's in, and that it's earnest money and not business funds or other funds that the broker or attorney may have. Generally, the earnest money is going to be dispersed at closing, and it would be credited to the buyer at closing to go toward the closing costs or purchase price or other costs related to the purchase. It can be at risk if you're in breach of contract, either by the buyer or the seller. And so that earnest money could be dispersed back to the buyer if the seller defaults, or if they're within their due diligence or financing contingency or some other contingency that might be out there. So that could, if you're outside of those contingencies, it could be at risk if you default or change your mind. So those are things that you want to think about, and let your real estate professional help you with when your earnest money would be at risk and when it would not be at risk when it comes to terminating or a change of direction or intentions there. And then how we can protect it is to follow those guidelines. Those guidelines are very specifically outlined in the contract. The contract is, if you're using a good contract, the contract should be a good contract that's written, that's balanced to protect the buyer and seller in the event that a change of heart or change of intentions happens. And then the last thing I want to cover in this particular video is the Georgia contract and what it says about earnest money. I'm going to say, though in section 6 of our contract on page 1, it talks about who's holding the earnest money. And in this case, it's got our brokerage, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, Metro Brokers is holding it. If the holder is a closing attorney, there's some other forms that give acknowledgement that the broker's holding it and that the buyer and seller have agreed to that. So those two other forms address that. The section 7 talks about how the money was sent to the holder, whether it's wire transfer, check, cash, ACH, and the amount and the timeline of that is there. The binding agreement date is a good timeline to work from because it's spelled out in our Georgia contract. And so that's all that's covered there. And then in the next part of our earnest money video, we're going to have a part 2 here because I want to break down each of these sections. So this is just a preview, but we'll talk about who's entitled to the earnest money, the disbursement of it, what happens if there's a dispute, and then what the broker's responsibilities are when it comes to earnest money. So thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll share and subscribe. We're glad you've joined us. We hope you continue to do so. We hope you're finding our information useful. And thank you so much for joining.